What are some of the most impactful money lessons that we've actually learned from clients? Welcome to Living the Savvy Life, where you can learn how to define the life you want to live and create a plan to fund it. It's all about purposeful spending. My name is Melissa Tosetti, and this is...
Hi, I'm Kevin Gibbons.
So, we've got a lot of lessons. We've worked with a lot of clients, right, Kevin? So, of course, we're going to learn things along the way, or at least I would hope.
Exactly. So we've been working with people to create spending plans and help with cash flow for well over 8 years. And in that time, one of the most important things that we've learned is to listen to our clients, not only because they deserve it and because it's really critical for us to understand what their situation is, but because oftentimes they actually already have some really good habits that we can take and then use to help other clients. Melissa and I are really firm believers that we do not have to invent everything. We will grab whatever exists out there and give proper credit and then use it to help other people. So there are so many great habits that we've come across out there. We're going to pick several to talk about this day. And Melissa, if you want to go ahead and get us started.
I'd be happy to. One of my... I start everything off with one of my favorites, but truly one of my favorite habits that I picked up from a client. We call it the Sunday morning Amazon habit. And that's pretty much exactly what it is. But to get the story behind how that habit got created, I think it makes that habit more impactful to understand how it can benefit. So I have had the pleasure of working with dozens and dozens of professors, professional, educators in universities and colleges, and some deans across time and across the country. And there was one particular gentleman who works for a university in Georgia, and he has, pretty good money habits, but his book habit was a bit out of control, or had been, I should say, a bit out of control. And he explained to me how he managed to basically to streamline that. Was he previously had the experience where throughout the week, as he was working on a project, so he has projects that he gets reimbursed for the books that he buys for work, but then he's got his own personal work-related projects, but there's no reimbursement. And so he would go along and he would order a book here and he would order a book there. And come at the end of the month, he'd realize he's spending, $600, $800 a month on books. I mean, that's a big number on top of, everything else.
Especially because they're professional books, and those are even more expensive. You're not talking, dime store novels. They're actually professional books can get pricey pretty quickly.
Yeah, very much so. And so, however he came up with this idea, he decided that he would just put everything into his cart as the week went along, and then on Sunday morning, with a cup of coffee, he sits down and he reviews what's in his cart. And when he gets over the sticker shock of what he would have paid if he had just kept clicking buy, what he does though is he inventories and he realizes, okay, so these two books are actually quite similar. I think this book is going to give me more of the information that I need so I can let this other book go. And you know what? I thought I was going to go in this direction with the book that I'm currently working on. I realize I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and take that book out of there. So he just had this time, this pause, if you will, to be able to really realize what it was that he wanted and become very picky. And I had never thought about it until this very, very moment, Kevin. I wonder how much time that saved him in reading and researching all those tomes that were coming in.
Yeah, you really went into two. You have two cases there. Either he's saving himself the time from not reading those extra books, or he's just saving himself from a lot of guilt of having all these books on his shelf, like a lot of us do, that at one point we thought we were interested in, but ended up not needing for whatever reason. So yeah, it does. It saves you time and it saves you money.
Yeah, I got the impression he reads everything, but I know for a fact, having worked with other clients, right, is that it's just so easy to hear a friend talk about a book and hit buy, and then they start to. There's one client I worked with in Kansas, and she had over 600 Kindle books on her Kindle backlog to read. She's like, it was almost depressing because there was just not enough time in the world to get through all that backlog. And then of course there's other things that she wanted to buy, and she just had to start letting those go. So that was a money lesson that It's equally important to,
Yeah.
to learn.
Yeah. But the whole idea of taking a breath before you make an impulse purchase and giving yourself the time to do that, the Amazon habit is a really great way of doing it. But we've actually taken this, we use that specific strategy with a lot of clients, but we've also taken it really much broader with the whole idea of whenever you're making a purchase, stop and think, if you give yourself time to think if you really want this. And to a large extent, that came out of this discussion. This whole idea of the Amazon Sunday habit really was an eye-opening way for us to really view that and to start conveying that to clients, I think.
It was a lovely way to tell a story, right? That's how we learn. We
Yep.
have an actual story that we can take from a client and a system with a name to it, right? A specific way of doing that versus just saying, you know, we've called it many things in the past. We've called called it a gatekeeper habit. We write about that. I was on a call with a client in Vermont to yesterday. I don't know what day it is. Some day at some point this week, I was talking with this client in Vermont, and we were talking. She's trying to just get out of the habit of just buying. She's got, you know, there's money is not necessarily an issue, but she just wants to become more conscious about it. And as we were talking, I made a comment about, you know, having just a great pause.
Mm-hmm.
And that idea she really loved, because it wasn't, you know, maybe gatekeeper sounds kind of negative.
Yeah.
You know, to some people, like I can, you know, in retrospect, I can understand that, but just that pause, that moment gives you just that chance to think about, is this something that I really want? Am I being reactionary? Am I getting triggered into making this purchase? Does this spark joy, right? It's all the same ideas, whatever we want to call it. So yeah, that was really, really key. And the amount of people that I know that have now taken and run with that particular idea, it's been lovely. Yeah.
What's another one that like?
So the other one is actually fairly recent to us, and that is clients in Maine. Been doing a lot on the East Coast. And they, you know, another couple that they've got, they're in a decent financial situation or a strong financial situation, but they have a tendency to just say yes to everything. They are very much don't want to lose a moment of time in this lifetime and want to do everything. But they also realize that often they're saying yes to stuff that maybe they could do it in a different way, save a little bit of time, save a little money, that would free up for things that in the past they haven't been able to do because they've said yes, they've committed time and they've committed money. And things that, yeah, that was fun, but oh my gosh, we're missing out on this. And specifically, their particular situation was, in the past, there was a family, they're sailors. I think I've talked about this family a couple of times. And they do a lot of sailing in the Atlantic. And they got a phone call from a family that was sailing through the Panama Canal. And they called them up and they said, hey, you want to come and hang out with us and actually help us like sail through the Panama Canal? And their answer was, hell yes. And they jumped in a plane and they were there within like a couple of days. And they wanted to be able to do more of that. And so there had to be a differentiation of, well, how do we, if we're committing all of our funds for travel and these trips that we want to do, how are we able to say yes to these serendipitous opportunities? And so we created, for the first time with them, a serendipity category, which I'm madly in love with now. Yeah. It's not my favorite. I'm madly in love with it. And it's just simply this idea of, be purposeful in these particular areas, right? You've decided you're going to go on this trip, this ski trip, you're going to sail here. That's what those expenses are going to be. But you don't want to necessarily plan every spare dollar. But if that money does not have a purpose, it just gets frittered away. And so that money, we actually crafted the serendipity category and we've funneled money in there. And now they have created the habit that anytime there's leftovers from the previous month, it goes into the serendipity account, and it just makes me blissful.
Yeah. And the idea, this really was, again, I said eye-opening before, this really was empowering to a lot of our clients, because many people, when they look at spending plans or budgets or whatever you want to call it, they really think of it either as being restrictive or there's no room for enjoyment. There's no room for spontaneity. Everything has to be planned out. If it's not part of the plan, you cannot do that. And that's not at all what we teach and preach. What we really want, the idea is you want to be able to have the opportunity and the resources to do those things as they come up. But if you're not planning for the specific activity or expense, you can plan for something unexpected is going to come up, and we want to be able to do that. And so that's what this is all about, is saying, we're not planning, they're not planning for that trip through the Panama Canal. They're planning for somebody is going to call us and say, hey, do you want to go do something fun? We have no idea what that is, but we're going to set up an account so when that call comes, we can look at our bank account and say, well, if it's less than this amount of money, yes, we can go do it.
Yeah.
And that gives you the freedom to enjoy, because spontaneity, serendipity, that's a big part of life. You should be able to enjoy that. You just have to make sure that you have the resources so you can do it. And
yeah,
I think
it's planning for serendipity, right? And what a wonderful way to live life is to have that mentality. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
something good's going to come up, and I don't want to have to miss it because I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah. It's important to know, though, this is not an emergency fund.
No.
This is the idea that your emergency fund is funded, or you have a system for funding that as you go along. This is truly I'm waiting. This money is allocated for fund money, which actually kind of goes into, or is a good segue going into the third money habit that we want to talk to you about that we learned from clients. And Kevin, you want to actually introduce this one?
Sure. This really is one of the things that we say a lot of times, again, we're talking with clients or when we're speaking in public, is money has gotten very complicated. It moves in very many different directions and moves very quickly. So one of our clients told us this idea of how to help compartmentalize that. And it's something that a lot of people, I've read about in other places too, but actually seen it in operation really was impactful. And that was the idea of dedicating a credit card or a bank account for a specific purpose. So you have one credit card that you use for your groceries and household expenses. You have another credit card that you use only for travel and vacation. Maybe you have one credit card that you use only for gasoline or local necessary type travel. It's a whole idea of compartmentalizing so that when you get those statements, it becomes very easy for you to go through and look at those statements and see how much you're spending in different areas. If you put everything on your debit card and you get your statement, whether that's your bank statement or your money tracking statement or whatever it is, and you have to start going through it and separating out, okay, well, this was for the trip that we took last month. That's not part of a regular expense. We don't need to worry about that. This was for our groceries. This was for this. Oh, I loaned money to so-and-so for this. It gets very complicated. So the idea of partitioning your expenses into different accounts just makes it much, much easier to manage. And this was a really useful technique that I had been kind of employing on my own, but I never really thought about it in that concrete term. And when we worked with this client and really saw how clear and effective it was, we jumped all over it, and we advise all of our clients to do some system of
some semblance of it. Yeah, some more complicated, some more simple. And you've got to really make this your own thing, because there are some clients where if we say, you might want to get a checking account for your actual bills, and you might want to get one credit card for your weekly spending and one credit card. And specifically, this client introduced to us the idea of one credit card dedicated to all automatic purchases, specifically anything to do with a subscription to something, anything like that. It was all on this one card. Previously, Kevin and I have always been advocates of having dedicated savings accounts, right? This flipped it, and this is dedicated spending currencies, if you will, right? And so it was that was very impactful, also from the perspective that when you set it up right and what is going to be easy for you to execute, it's a way for you to potentially track your spending without tracking your spending. Right. Yeah. And that is, for so many people that we work with, do we advocate tracking spending? It's the magic bullet. Yes, absolutely. If everybody could track their spending, they would benefit from it. Can everybody track their spending, or do they want to? No. No. And we get it. So you got to figure out how to get the next best thing.
Yeah. But the nice thing about it, especially the way this client used it, is that in one way of thinking about it, she only had to track part of her spending once. She set everything up for these are the recurring expenses that don't change because they're subscriptions. So once I go through and check them and say, yes, I want to spend on these things, then on one level, she could almost forget about it because everything that was on that credit card, she had already vetted. She'd already decided that this was what she wanted to spend on. The dollar values really weren't changing. So she could take one look at that statement and say, does the bottom line match what it did last month? Okay, I'm done with it. She doesn't have to go through and itemize and check every single thing. So it makes it much, much simpler. And that's the whole beauty of it, is making everything simple so that you are really focusing on the items that are really important to you and that really require that attention, and leaving the others a little bit less attention to detail on it.
To a great degree, what that does is it creates one bill for all those expenses, right? You take, I've got all these different subscriptions I've got on my blah, 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 right? But I'm going to pay them in one click.
Yep.
Check, however she's going to pay for them, right? So it's simplifying so much of what we do, and what is so very important is in simplifying financialize, because man, it is freaking chaos out there.
So what are the three habits we talked about today? We talked about the first one, which I'm drawing a blank on.
The Sunday Amazon habit.
Sunday Amazon habit. We talked about the Sunday Amazon habit. We talked about saving for serendipity, and we talked about partitioning your credit cards or your spending accounts in a way that makes sense to you, to make it simpler for you to categorize and to track it.
Yeah. Okay. So no matter what habits you put into play, and hopefully we've introduced some fun ones to you that you can take and run with, you've got to have a plan. You've got to have a plan for your overall financial life, right? Spending plans, they fund the life that you want to live. And whether it's something that you do yourself or you hire a resource like the Savvy Life, like what it is that we do, you need that plan. And so it's just too easy in life to wander aimlessly and bleed money along the way, or you can create a map and go in a much straighter line to the life that you want to live.
Yep,
all right.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, and with that, we will go to, the usual bits at the end where we tell you to check us out on our website, thesavvylife.com. Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're very active on the LinkedIn. And am I forgetting anything, Kevin?
YouTube videos.
Yeah.
You're watching this, so check out the rest of our videos on the YouTube channel. And as they say, like and subscribe. Go through them, and we have a lot of content up there now, so enjoy.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Okay. Kevin, do you think that we should reshoot that last bit where I was struggling, or do you think it's okay?
I think it will be okay, to be honest with you. I don't think that you were struggling that much.
Okay, let's leave it then.
Okay, and you're still recording.
What was that?
It looks like you're still recording.
Yeah, we'll stop that.